the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Welcome to the program. We made it to the middle of the week, final week of January, and good afternoon. We're on here for a couple hours. We hope to be here for 4. You never know with the way things have been going this week. We are here to give you a break from Super Bowl coverage. Yes, that is going on, but we're the alternative. Talk to you, of course, on the phone at 855-242-7285. That's risky business based on yesterday's show. We'll also have a number of guests. We'll take you until early evening, and a week from today, National Signing Day, that will be a big topic today with Jeremy Crabtree, ESPN's senior recruiting coordinator. We wouldn't want the junior guy on today. We got the real McCoy, Greg McElroy, who was not that heavily recruited, actually committed to Texas Tech under Mike Leach, and then dumped him at the altar when Tim Tebow opted for Florida. He went to Alabama. What did he do there? Won a national championship. And winning a national championship is something Butch Jones hopes to do. And with another big-time recruiting haul, which is predicted for Butch and the Vols on next Wednesday, they may get there. Tennessee, the buzz team right now, I think, in the SEC. We'll talk a little bit about the buzz meter later on. We'll do a Moron count. You may have heard the Jim Charles call yesterday. We'll also talk about a Tennessee commitment, big-time 5-star who went to Auburn the other day. Tried to recruit for Tennessee. Now that takes some, can't say it, gusto, yes. I've been thinking of that about the Tom Brady and the deflated situation, but that does take some gusto.
Yeah,
thank you, Mark.
Butch Jones in a half an hour. He'll be here. We could ask him about the offensive coordinator search, National Signing Day coming up, but we have to ask him about this new recruiting tactic at Tennessee. Preston Williams, he's a 5-star. He's got a verbal to Tennessee. He took an official visit, Paul, to Auburn, wearing all Tennessee gear, trying to persuade others on their official visit to Auburn to come to Tennessee. I don't know if I've ever seen a story like this before. I don't know if it's immaturity, just not understanding that maybe you should be respectful if you're going on an official visit. You can only go on so many official visits, but what do you make of this story? By the way, Auburn asked him to leave early.
They shouldn't have waited as long as they did. Youthful exuberance, I think, would be the best way to describe it. I think it's only fair, though, that a Tennessee recruit infiltrated Auburn, considering Will Muschamp and T. Robinson are pretty much blowing away the Florida recruiting haul. We'll talk about that a little bit later on with Greg McElroy. He has a different view as old coach Jim McElwain, trying to hold on against all pressure in the state of Florida. McElroy has a different take than some of our callers. We'll also talk a little basketball. It's Wednesday night, big hoops night, and I did watch. There was a lot of basketball on last night. I watched A&M go into Auburn and win. Bruce Pearl, of course, on Saturday returns to Knoxville for the first time as a head coach. He may still have a home there, so I don't think it's his first trip back. It's certainly a free trip, though, paid for by the Auburn University basketball program. A couple of other games. Georgia held on, and Alabama came from way down, one of the worst first halves I have ever seen. Almost looked like Alabama's second half in the Sugar Bowl. They came back, tied the game against Florida. Would Anthony Grant break that 0-8 losing streak against his former coach and mentor? No. One of the worst jobs of coaching for the final shot I've ever seen. Florida blocked the last 2 shots from Alabama, and Alabama loses again. They get to go to Rupp Arena Saturday as a consolation prize, and the drumbeat for Anthony Grant's head continues.
The perfect way to score your first bucket of the game for Finney Smith of Florida. I can't remember. There's been some exciting finishes, but that right-handed axe that he threw down for those game-winning points. I'm watching the game. I turned it on. I see it's 52-50, and I didn't even think to look at the time. 20 seconds left in the ball game. That's a low-scoring game, a bad loss at home. We had Tony Delkin here yesterday, Paul, and he said Alabama is one of his teams that could go either way in the tournament. They have to win their home games. They dropped one last night. Yeah,
they're a good home team. Not after last night. They've now lost to Florida, Kentucky. They don't have much on their resume. And remember, for those of you who were with us a year ago in March, Athletic Director Bill Battle stuck with Anthony Grant that final season. It's beginning to look a little bit like Will Muschamp, although the record is better, the results are not impressing anyone. And I woke up this morning, put on the SEC Network on television, and I watched the end of the game again. I'm like going, maybe they'll get it right this time. No, they didn't. Your phone calls at 855-242-7285. Let's start in Dallas, Texas. Omar is first up. Good afternoon, Omar.
Having me on again.
Thank you.
I wanted to just communicate something. My father-in-law, we lost my father-in-law last night. He passed away, and he became a fan of your show this past season. I've been listening to your show for a while and watching it, but he hadn't until I kind of introduced him to it. He became a fan, and he looked forward to watching it and listening to it every day. And he became a fan of, of course, SEC football. He was mainly an NFL fan, a Cowboy fan, Dallas Cowboys fan, and but he began to kind of appreciate, the SEC and the football teams there, like, of course, all the big ones like Bama and A&M and LSU. And so I just wanted to kind of call and, communicate and thank you for having putting on the show like you do and things like that, because he really enjoyed it.
Omar, thank you. I really appreciate your comments, and sometimes, we forget. I know we're cognizant of people out there, but we don't hear many stories like yours, but when we do, it does ring and resonate a special note, and I deeply appreciate it. We're certainly sorry for your family's loss and hope for better days ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Have a good day, Paul.
Thank you very much. Now, it's I had a friend of mine who sent me a note a couple weeks ago. She lost her husband and said how much he he used to listen and now he watches, and it always it just brings home the reality of life, and we've all dealt with it at some level, and it doesn't make it any easier. So thank you so much for sharing that with all of us. We check in next with Jumbo, who is in Tuscaloosa. Jumbo, thank you for the call. Good afternoon.
Thank you for taking it, Paul. So you touch a lot of people's lives with your show, Paul.
Thank you.
You're a special person. Listen, last night, I don't know if you watched the Alabama game, but
yeah, I did.
I watched it. And Anthony Grant, if you listen to his post-game show, we didn't rebound good. We didn't pass the ball well. We didn't shoot well. Alabama's a good defensive team, but we got to have some guys to put the ball in the hole. What do you think about that? I mean, I think he should go, but I don't think we're the basketball team we need to be.
Yeah, a year ago, I was asked by someone on the day that he was retained, what would you do? And I gave an opinion, and my opinion was I would have replaced him, just like Jay Jacobs replaced Tony Barbie and hired Bruce Pearl. I did understand Coach Battle's decision. Anthony Grant has done, he puts a very competitive team on the court. They just can't ever win the big game. And at some point that catches up. I felt like he had to get into the tournament this year and maybe even do something. I remember talking to C.M. Newton, someone I respect C.M. as much as any man in America. And he came on our program and defended the decision. He's very close to Anthony, and he made some basketball analysis, and when you watch Alabama play, they do contest. They're very good defensively. Recruiting-wise, they certainly had enough players, but at some point, you have to win those games. And right now, if you look at Alabama's record, Cecil Hurt told us this the other day, they have a fairly reasonable schedule coming up, other than Kentucky, but I think that was the fourth loss out of 5 games. They came from way back to beat Auburn. You assume they'll lose to Kentucky. They're running out of opportunities. Even if they get on a run here, they've missed on some opportunities to impress the committee, and I think the future looks pretty bleak for Coach Grant.
Will it save his job? Do you think beating Kentucky will save it? Because I don't like the guy. I never have. I met him at City Cafe, and he wouldn't even talk to me. So,
well, I made this comment last year that I've met Anthony a couple of times, and he's cordial. He's not he's not Bruce Pearl, but who is? I don't know if we've ever even spoken to Anthony Grant on the show. We had John Calipari on yesterday. He's only the number one basketball coach in the country right now, at least the number one team. He doesn't go out of his way to make himself available, and that's his prerogative. I mean, we don't care on this program. I mean, we take what we can get, and when you get stuck with the John Calipari's of the world and the Bruce Pearls, you just have to settle, as the old country song says. So, whatever happens to Anthony Grant is Bill Battle's prerogative. I'm interested in whether he can succeed or not, because it reminds me a little bit of what Jeremy Foley did. You gamble on one more year, and when it doesn't happen, you burn 2 years as opposed to only one.
Well, my thing is fire him. I say fire him, get rid of him, get somebody in there who's going to make us a competitive program a lot better and win ball games. Let's put it like that. So, okay, folks, y'all have a nice day.
Yeah, I never thought I'd hear Alabama fans yearn for the good old days of Mark Gottfried, who's doing respectably in Raleigh at NC State. But right now, I think some would take him back, even though that would not be possible.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
We welcome everyone back. And speaking of legit, Tennessee was a big bowl win, recruiting buzz across the land, expected to have another big haul next Wednesday. We're joined by the head coach at the University of Tennessee, Butch Jones. Coach, thanks for the time. Congratulations on the big bowl win. I know folks in Knoxville are fired up.
Well, thanks, Paul. Very proud of everyone in our football family and excited for Vol Nation as well, and obviously a great springboard for this off season in our strength and conditioning program and then in the spring football as well. And it helps also as we continue to finish out this recruiting cycle.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there are some things you can say about recruiting, and there's a lot you can. I know next Wednesday at this time you'll be in a little better situation, but just overall, the experts really like what you're doing. What is the view from inside the building?
Well, obviously we're very, very excited, and for us to take the next step in our football program, it's developing that overall depth, that overall competition, that competitive character, which we talk about every day in our football program, and we're being able to do that. And it's, attracting the right fit, the individuals who fit our recruiting profile here at Tennessee. And we were also aided with 10 newcomers that have already enrolled in, they're in our off-season strength and conditioning program and in the school. So that really helped us in working to secure this class, and I know we're all looking forward to Wednesday.
Coach, I know there's a lot you can't say. There are some restrictions until they sign on the dotted line, but we did report a story that something tells me you've probably heard about all the. You may want to act like you haven't. That some young man who committed to Tennessee but hasn't signed yet went to another school and was actively recruiting for Tennessee. Is there any way to address that in a general way, or is that unspoken ground?
Well, I did hear about it through obviously the media sources, but I think that just shows you the pride and ownership that we're developing in our Tennessee football program.
Very diplomatic answer, Coach. I'm going to nominate you for an ambassadorship after your answer on that. All kidding aside, I do want to talk about the loss of your offensive coordinator. We get calls every day. What's happening up there? Can you give us a status report?
Well, yes. Right now we're currently going through the phase of multitasking, so to speak, where we're trying to finish out this last week of recruiting, but also really looking to fill that spot and find the best fit possible for our football program. And, that search is going exceptionally well, and I'm going to take my time. And it's all about finding the right fit. The fans want you to hire a resume and all that, but I know what's best for Tennessee football. I know exactly what we need and what we need to take the next step. And, I'm very thankful to Coach Bajake and everything that he brought, but now it's to bring somebody in to really take us to the next level, an expert of the game, somebody, I'd like to know them. I think trust is big in our football program, and chemistry of a staff is very, very important. So we have a lot of, great candidates. Obviously, it's a very attractive position, but for us, it's finding the right fit for us in our football program as we continue to move forward.
Certainly, he played a big role at the University of Tennessee. His departure comes at a strange time, although we've seen this at other schools. Were you surprised? Did you see this coming? Obviously, his relationship with with Levy Smith, but it did seem like bad timing, at least from a recruiting standpoint.
Well, we had spoken about it, and, Coach Jake had a dream of being able to coach in the National Football League one day. And, that's what's happened when you have good coaches, good teachers, good people. These types of things are going to happen. And so we were prepared. I keep a journal on my desk of, coaches that I really respect in this profession if something happens. And, with the timing, everything is about relationships, and we basically staff recruit. So we've had no obstacles that way because of the relationships that have been built over time with our prospective student athletes and their families. So that hasn't been any hindrance at all with this recruiting class. But the way I look at it is it's a great, great opportunity for us to take the next step in our program to really make us better. And I tell you what, after going around the country and speaking with a number of individuals, I'm as excited and optimistic as I've ever been, because I think the next person we bring in really has an opportunity to take us to the next level in all phases of what we're looking for.
Coach, I realize next Wednesday is the goal and you need to get through that, but can Tennessee fans expect a coach fairly soon after National Signing Day?
Absolutely. Like I said, we're multitasking right now, but, everything is about a gut feeling and, and finding the right fit. And again, everyone wants you to go hire this person or that person based off a resume, but, they have to trust me. I'm the caretaker of Tennessee football, and, I know what our players need. I know what this coaching staff needs. I know what this program needs as we continue to move forward. And we're going to get the best coach for Tennessee, and I can assure you that we will get the best of the best.
Coach, we get questions all the time about Joshua Dobbs, and so do you. Certainly he made an incredible impression. If we could go back a year, certainly you had a senior well-respected in Worley, and I understand what you saw in him, but do you ever go back and think a little bit about that decision? Because Dobbs came on so well, and I know you'd seen him before, to say the least. He had a little bit of playing time, but go back a year ago and maybe take us through your thought process on him.
Well, again, I think, his development, he's done a great job, and that's a tribute to him. And you can see the confidence right now that he gained from this past season as he's leading us now currently in our off-season strength and conditioning program. But, no, Justin Worley was our starter, and Justin Worley deserved to be our starter through his body of work that occurred in the off-season, spring football, and then into training camp. And I think that Josh really benefited from that. Josh benefited from the extra repetitions. He benefited from learning from Justin. So when Josh was able to gain, that opportunity, he took the most of it. And I think, again, that continues to be an illustration for everyone out there, is you have to keep working every day. And we always talk to our players that you're always one step away and you never know when that opportunity is going to come. But when that opportunity comes, you need to make the most of it. And Josh has been able to do that. But I think that time he was able to sit back, get valuable repetitions in practice, and learn from Justin, I think that was very, very important in his overall developmental process.
Coach, we've talked about this a couple of times, and I think it's a great subject to discuss, and that's the buzz on the UT campus. I've been there a couple of times. I've witnessed it firsthand, and I know you like that problem. But if you go back to the day you were hired, in your mind and as you put a plan together, would you say you're on schedule, ahead of schedule? What would you say?
Well, I believe we're on schedule, and Paul, we still have a long ways to go. We're not there yet, not even close to being there, and it starts in the development in your offensive and defensive lines and the overall development across the board. And you fix that, with acquisition of talent and a mentality and a mindset through recruiting. So we're not there yet, but we're making great, great strides. The foundation, the expectations are now in place. And our players have a great spirit. They have great energy. The workouts have been going outstanding so far. So, again, there is a lot of momentum. There is a lot of excitement. But, again, we still may be the youngest team in all of college football next year. And so, again, we have to just continue to get better and better and better and work to take the next steps. And if you say, well, what are those next steps? Well, it's improvement in all the areas, the fundamentals, the fine details of what it takes to play winning football, that depth and competition that we spoke about earlier. So, again, a long way to go, but we are taking monumental strides, and I think everyone around the country can see that.
Well, congratulations on the success. I know you're excited to get through next Wednesday, and I know Tennessee fans
can't get here soon enough.
Best wishes, and I'll let you get back to work.
Okay, Paul. Thanks again for the opportunity, and as always, you do a tremendous job. And this is always on at my house 24/7, so that's all my wife watches. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad to hear that. Best wishes to her. Good stuff, Coach Butch Jones. Mostly his wife, Mrs. Jones, a loyal watcher of the SEC network, and we're glad to hear it. We're starting small, little by little. We'll get there.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Thanks for being with us as we head to hour number 2. A week from now, most of the shouting will be over with. I'm sure there'll be one player who hasn't committed, but most will have signed on the dotted line. A week away from National Signing Day, and Jeremy Crabtree, the senior recruiting guru for ESPN, joins us, and we're actually waiting. He's just signed a letter of intent with Tennessee, so we'll give him just one more second before we bring him on board. We'll continue taking your phone calls at 855-242-7285. As I mentioned, National Signing Day is 1 week from today, and Jeremy Crabtree joins us now. Jeremy, thanks for the time, and 1 week to go. Someone in your position has to keep up with the whole board, but what interests you the most at this late date?
Yeah, there's several that stand out the most. I mean, obviously the battle between Florida and Auburn for a high amount of kids that could kind of potentially swing either class certainly jumps out to me. When you're involved with the number 1 player in the country overall, the number 5 player overall, number 9 player, you get the picture. There's some big guys that are going to swing between either one of those schools, and if they all end up at one place, say a Florida, then it suddenly makes Jim McElwain's first class look tremendous. If they end up at Auburn, that makes the coup that they were able to get all those assistant coaches look like it's worthwhile. I'm also very intrigued by the situation developing in the Lone Star State for the high-profile quarterback prospect and what he brings to the table and could mean for the future of both Texas and Texas A&M recruiting.
Okay, let's start. Both are important topics. Let's talk about Florida first. I mean, the headlines are bad. The perception is bad. That can be changed in a week. And what will it take for Mac and his staff to turn this around in the final couple of days?
Yeah, if you're a Florida fan, you're still looking and you see that they have the second lowest amount of Power 5 commitments of any other Power 5 program in the country, next to Michigan that just has 9. So it's a real opportunity for Coach McElwain, Coach Jeff Collins, Kirk Callahan, and Tim Skipper, who are all, I think, all very good recruiters, to kind of prove that they can get it done in a short amount of time and maybe shift the momentum to the 2016 class. I think a lot of Florida fans weren't expecting him to come in and suddenly win over all these guys late, but if he does that, and if he's able to get some of these 5-star guys to come their way, then it certainly serves notice to everybody else that recruits in the Sunshine State that they're going to be a factor. It is really kind of imperative to do very good here in this last week.
How is Auburn situated? Because they could be the big beneficiary. Even if they lose a few of these, it's probably not the end of the world. But if you had to watch one battle as an indicator or a litmus test, which one would it be?
Well, to me, it starts with the number 1 player in the country, the big defensive end from Florida. If he goes to Auburn, then I think he kind of serves as a Pied Piper effect and ends up pushing the other guys with him. So that one really jumps out to me. And you're right, Paul. Auburn's class isn't going to be made or broke by just these couple guys here. There are still some high-profile kids already committed, already signed in this class. They've got a tremendous running back class coming their way. I really like what they've done in the defensive backfield, too. So it's not going to be made or broken by what happens with these final few guys, but certainly if these final 5-star guys do come on board, it would then certainly push them way up there, possibly as high into our top 5.
Okay, let's go to the Lone Star State. We all know what the battle lines are between Texas and A&M, but give it to us straight, because we talked yesterday about the quarterback prospect who we thought was going to A&M and now may not be. What's the inside story there?
Yeah, it is a truly fascinating situation for the quarterback, because he has been committed to Texas A&M now for 7 months and has been a big reason why a number of their offensive commitments have come their way. And he is the face of high school football in the state of Texas, going 43-0 and winning 3 state championships. To me, if this kid does flip to Texas, it is as big of a recruiting moment in the Lone Star State as we've seen in the last 20 years. Bigger than when Adrian Peterson went to Oklahoma, bigger than when Vince Young went to Texas. I know both of those guys were number 1 consensus players, but there are so many other factors behind the scenes that make this a big deal. A&M and UT are battling for 8 out of the top 10 guys in the Lone Star State. They're still on the board, and if this one guy comes and flips to Texas, then it'll, again, like we said with the number 1 player in Auburn, it could cause a Pied Piper effect with Texas and shift that momentum to Charlie Strong's staff, because Kevin Sumlin has been running the Lone Star State and recruiting for the last 3 classes, but this is imperative for both these programs to try to get this kid and lock him up.
Is this more about Charlie Strong finally finding his comfort zone, or is there something we need to know about Kevin Sumlin and Texas A&M?
No, I think you're right. I think it is more about Charlie Strong kind of finding his comfort zone. I mean, there was much made about how he made a bad first impression with a lot of Texas high school football coaches this past spring at a big coaches clinic. He apparently did not give a great speech to a lot of folks, but the best thing about Charlie Strong, and a lot of recruits have told me this, a lot of former players have told me this, and a lot of high school coaches have told me this, he is great one-on-one, sitting in the living rooms, talking football. He is at his best when he's been able to do that, and it's just finally taken him a little bit of time to build these relationships, and he's put together a pretty good recruiting staff, and I think once people started to listen to what he's selling and really understand him beyond just the face that you see on the Longhorn Network, they understand that he's a pretty good guy, and that's been resonating with a lot of folks.
Let's also talk about Missouri. That's not a school that we see show up in the national rankings. They do show up at the end of the year in Atlanta playing for the SEC title game. What's finally going on with Gary Pinkel? I
think Gary Pinkel and his classes are finally maybe starting to get the love that they've maybe deserved for such a long time. And I've been around this for a long time, and I can count on one hand how many times he's had a top 25 class. But as you pointed out so well, they just win ball games and send players to the NFL. And this year's class is starting to get the type of respect. They have picked up some momentum here. They got Brandon. They got a big receiver prospect from the state of Texas. They've started to make some moves with the number 2 player in the country. So if they're able to close as strong as what we think they will cement themselves easily in the top 25. And that's something a lot of folks haven't talked a lot about Missouri for a long time. It's just a very, very good class for Gary Pinkel. Great at developing and evaluating, but finally able to maybe get some higher caliber quality kids too.
What is going on in Baton Rouge, where John Chavis left, Kevin Steele and Ed Orgeron arrived? Impact so far, or not?
Well, I think there was just such high expectations when you bring two just nationally known recruiters like Ed Orgeron and Kevin Steele on board, that they were going to suddenly start reeling in every 5-star player in the country. And I think those expectations were kind of unfair on those guys, because we all know that recruiting is about building relationships, and it takes often two years to finally get a guy to believe and buy into you. And it's so tough to sell a kid, especially when they're being so heavily recruited like the guys are on LSU's list, to get them to buy in just a few weeks. Now, I fully expect them to maybe have a couple surprises up their sleeves here as we move into the final few hours of signing day, and next year will be when we fully see Coach O and Kevin Steele be able to flex the recruiting muscle. So maybe not the type of results LSU fans dreamed of here in this final week, but wait till next year. I think that they'll do a tremendous job.
In the SEC, certainly we know about the top. We knew about that a year ago. But if you look at the other side, if you had to pick out a school that has surprised you from a disappointing standpoint, other than Florida, which we don't know about yet, where would you land?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, we still have to look a little bit at Vanderbilt. I thought maybe they had some traction with that coaching staff, and I know things didn't go well on the field, and it's so tough to sell kids a little bit on when you're not winning as many ball games as and maybe keep that momentum you had under James Franklin. I think even South Carolina a little bit disappointed. And it sounds weird to say that because they are a top 25 class, they're a top 15, top 20 class, but they have had some defections throughout this recruiting process, and a lot of folks had these questions about Steve Spurrier's future. I know we talked about it last week, but I think their class, people saw what could have been a top 5 class and look and see they're down the ranks a little bit. That was a little bit disappointing for them.
On that note, I mean, Vanderbilt's season last year was a bust. I mean,
yeah.
There's no way of getting around it. And if Coach Mason's not turning the tails on the recruiting trail now in year 2, what's the outlook look like? Because you have to start getting some players in there.
No, you're right. You're right, and it's interesting. They have to recruit a little bit differently than most everybody else in the SEC. It's well known about their academic reputation. They have to recruit more nationally. But as has been proven at other places like Duke, Stanford, there is a formula out there for schools of higher academic integrity to go out there and do successful things on the recruiting trail, and that's often by taking your brand around the national recruiting trail. And you look at Vanderbilt's class, they've got kids from Pennsylvania, they've got kids from California, Arizona, Georgia, Texas. So I think they're taking the right steps. It's just so tough when you don't produce results on the field. So this next year, this 2015 season is going to be very, very imperative for Coach Mason and his staff to show some signs of life, and that'll be able to help them take that national recruiting game and have some success there.
Finally, Alabama. I know it sounds like a broken record, but Lane Kiffin stays. There have been some coaching defections, some new people in. Any effect positively or negatively?
Yeah, I wish you could say one way or the other. There really hasn't been much change with Alabama. I think they continue, unless they have some defections. I don't really see very many, if any at all, happening with in the final week for the Crimson Tide. I think again they still are lock solid at that number 1 spot, barring disaster. Yeah,
disaster is not a word you often hear in connection to Nick Saban, other than rewatching the Sugar Bowl.
That's true.
Jeremy, many thanks. We'll talk soon, I hope.
All right, take care, Paul.
Good stuff. Jeremy Crabtree with the latest on recruiting. A week from now, we'll be sitting here looking at almost final charts, and I can't wait to move forward on that.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
We welcome all of you back. Time to grab some more calls here at 855-242-7285. And Dennis is up next in Chicago. Good afternoon, Dennis.
Hi, Paul. How are you today?
I'm well. Thank you very much.
Just a couple of quick comments about the football polls. I think we learned 2 things this year. First of all, it doesn't matter where a team is ranked after 6 weeks or 7 weeks or 8 weeks. And just look at what happened with ECU and with Baylor. So there's not much point in getting all upset and jumping up and down and screaming and hollering 6 or 7 weeks into the season where your team is ranked 4th or 8th or 10th, because it doesn't mean a darn thing. The other thing is, doesn't matter if you win a game by 10 points or 20 points or 50 points. The only thing that matters is you didn't lose the game. They just looked at straight wins and losses. They didn't look at who really beat up on who. And that's kind of my position on it.
Well, it's a good way of looking at it. But I do believe that the polls do help set the table, so to speak. I mean, this year wouldn't be a really good example because I think the Final Four in the preseason AP poll were all ranked in the top 5 in the country. But you do have room for change, and we saw that with Auburn. We've seen that a number of times. I think with the new playoff, though, you have a much better opportunity because whatever metrics they're looking at, and we're still not 100% sure after 8 weeks of explanation, the polls are not the only determinant. So they're not nearly as important as they used to be. Larry is in Missouri, and you are next up, Larry.
Hey, Mr. Finebaum, how you getting along today?
Okay.
Hey, great. Hey, oh, boy, I tell you what, old Teddy Ballgames, he was really preening today now. I mean, I tell you what, I think he needs to run down to Bed Bath & Beyond and invest in some new mirrors. I mean, from my experience, if you never show your face in public, the truth is you look more like the freaking elephant man. I mean, I will agree with one thing he had to say, though. The women been chasing him, but he left out that part that 99% of the time they had a butcher knife in their hand. And the last thing I'll say, I do agree he was a hell of a ball player. You know, that's beyond doubt. And I'll tell him the same thing I told my 7-year-old daughter after she struck out 3 times in a T-ball game. Dang, you're really good. Thanks, ball player.
Larry, bringing some heat. Let's check in next with Joe in Vicksburg, Mississippi. Afternoon, Joe.
How you doing, sir? First time caller. Glad to be on your show.
Oh, we're glad to have you.
Yeah, I'm a LSU fan. Been an LSU fan all my life, and I'm pretty got a couple of comments and a question. I'm pretty satisfied with the Kevin Steele or Jerron hire. They can still have a chance to prove themselves again, and I believe they will. They both are good recruiters, and you're going to get the best players that mostly out of Louisiana and the surrounding area and state. And I believe they'll do well. And what do you think about Leonard Fournette for the Heisman?
Well, I think Leonard Fournette is in a position, but I will tell you this: to win the Heisman, your team better be somewhere near the top of the polls. You don't have. It's been proven you don't have to be the national champion, although it certainly doesn't hurt to be a major contender based on the last couple of years. Certainly, RG3's team wasn't in the finals, but if you go back, you'll find certainly the last 2 years, and you'll find the Heisman winner usually coming from one of the top teams in America.
Yeah, that's true, and I agree with you. But and it would help if he did have a little quarterback help.
A lot of quarterback help, and I'm hoping the light to come on one of these two guys, Brandon Harris or Jennings, and maybe something good can happen out there. I don't want to, run a little 21 or 22-year-old kid under the bus and have your life depend on every Saturday about that, and have a bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds trying to make your year and your life. But Joe, that's what it's all about. That's college football, and these guys make a lot of money, and Les Miles understands the terrain, and his livelihood, not his life, thank goodness, his livelihood does depend on 17 to 22-year-olds, and you live and die with that. Ron is next. Rick is up next in Los Angeles on this Wednesday afternoon. What's up, Rick?
Well, thank you, Paul. Hello, John. Say, I tell you what, I love a lot of your callers. Boomer Sooner Larry, though, he's tops. He's good. I enjoy him all the time. Good call there. The gentleman from Georgia was bringing up about commentators, and I'm like him. Most of them I could do without. One, though, I do like, and I enjoy his analyst is Todd Blackledge. I really like his
very
play.
Good.
He's very knowledgeable, and he doesn't run off at the mouth. And what he says is usually, "Hey, you taught me." So I like Todd. But the reason I'm calling today, guys, is he had Jumbo on about Alabama and having scoring issues. Well, as a UCLA guy, I thought that was our only problem out here. But look,
by the way, Alabama beat the Bruins a couple weeks ago.
Say, let me tell you about Coach. Last year he came to Pollard Pavilion and he lost a tough, close game, and I like that team. And this year, you know, they've had some tough losses, but the key about that, Paul, is, you know, you got to win. Everybody wants to win, and I understand. Me being a Bruin, it's the same thing. But I'll tell you what, the key will be, does he lose that team? And if that team will continue to fight and battle to the end, that's all you can ask for those young men, okay? So that's the only thing I want to say. But in general, in NCAA basketball, which is my second love besides football, this is not just an Alabama or UCLA problem. This is a problem across the nation. If you gentlemen check the tickers this year, it's an eyesore. And I feel the last couple of years the quality has slipped. You have a handful of teams. Actually, Kentucky's second team could beat most of the teams out there. They're that good. But I have a standard thing about, to me, the evil empire is the NBA, and it goes hand in hand. And it goes to the one and done. And thanks to the one and done, and these young men are leaving early, is killing college basketball. And furthermore, fellas, I think it's hurt the quality of the NBA because you're getting a lot of young men going to the NBA who are not prepared yet.
Oh, no, yeah, I mean, Rick, I've put on idle Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night NBA games. I mean, they're dreadful.
Eyesore.
I mean, the players are all great, but there's no cohesion, and college basketball is the same way. I mean, I watch it every night like you do, but sometimes.
Well, Paul. Paul. Here's the thing. I thought we were gone with the days of no shot clock. Some of these scores, 29 points, 37 points, 41. Even last night's game, 52-50. I mean, what? You know, now don't get me wrong. I don't appreciate either 115 or 109. You know, I like a good defensive game, but no, you know, Jumbo brought out a point. But this is a problem across the nation. And again, I think it's a lack of quality, and you only have a handful of teams I would consider.
Yeah, you don't understand it, Rick. But that's why thanks for the caller, Calipari is so great that he's able to do it. And I thought what he said yesterday, I mean, he never misses an opportunity. He was talking about Krzyzewski, and he said what he's done with my guys on the USA teams. That's what he's always recruiting, and players go there for an obvious reason. It's Kentucky, and it's also a ticket to the NBA.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast. Call of the day.
You're welcome to say whatever you would like. That's what this program's all about.
On the Paul Finebaum Show.
Ron next up in Ocala, Florida. Good afternoon, Ron. Thanks.
What's going on, Paul? How you feeling?
I'm doing great.
I know you Gator bait today. That's what I do know. Hey, so my thing is with this Tennessee thing that you keep on talking about today, what you seem to forget is Muschamp did the worst possible job ever. I mean, who has been worse than him other than Pell? We don't even talk about him. Who's been worse than him? So,
Ron,
all right, yeah.
I mean, I don't mean to be snarky here, but not my fault. Jeremy Foley's the one that hired him. Jeremy Foley's the one that gave him one more year.
Well, we know you said that already, so let me say this. What I'm saying is, if that's how horrible of a coach we had for the last 2-3 years or whatever, all right, with us having Jim McElroy in the All-Star cast, you know, the same guy who did what he did at Alabama, that same offense.
Don't forget, Muschamp had a pretty good. Hey, hold on a second. Muschamp had a pretty good defensive coordinator before he left to go to Seattle.
So what?
I said Muschamp had a pretty good defensive coordinator until he left to go to Seattle. You do remember that, don't you?
Yeah, I do remember Muschamp having a good defensive coordinator.
Okay. But you act like Muschamp is just garbage. I mean, Muschamp went 11-1.
Okay, but he was horrible at paying attention to details and having any kind of offensive input. So when you got a team that's tired for being on the field all day long, naturally they're going to underperform in games. So what I'm saying is, if you have a coach that's going to come in with a somewhat ineptitude to offense, all right, the only concern I'm worried about is the offensive line. But it summers up what he's done the last 2 years.
Let's move on, Ron. I mean, I want to know from you where's this confidence coming from?
Because bottom line,
other than being a Gator,
I was at the stadium in South Carolina, and that guy sucked the whole energy out of the stadium with his dismal.
Okay, so one second, Ron. Give me a second here. Let me try to describe Florida fans over the last couple of years. Muschamp comes in, not his fault. Urban Meyer's a scumbag. He buried the program. Muschamp fails. He keeps failing. Foley gives him an extension. Now it's Muschamp's fault, and Jim McElwain is on a white horse. So, I mean, what's the deal with you on that? I mean, I really don't understand it.
That's definitely not my opinion. Muschamp is a defensive genius. I ain't going to take that away from him.
Listen, let's talk about what we know that.
He's a defensive coordinator, not a head coach.
I realize that. He had three offensive coordinators, but a lot of us bought in a year ago that he finally got it right. I bet you did too.
Who bought into that?
I did.
You did. I didn't. I knew all along.
Okay, well, you're smarter than I am, obviously.
Season, we lost to, I don't know what division that team is in.
Georgia Southern.
Come on. So when that happened,
Ron, let's have a civil comment. Ron, hold on. So other than what McElwain did at Colorado State, and don't give me he won a national championship or two at Alabama, so have a lot of other people. Why are you so upbeat? What do you see?
Okay. I'm so glad you asked that question. It's the system. See, when you have an innovator, innovation is the key. If you look at all of Florida's good coaches, you had Steve Spurrier, he was an innovator. When you had Urban Meyer, innovator. When all of our bad fails have been people who have been basic, that's not the product from Florida. You got to have somebody who has an innovation to offense. So with this guy coming in with that reputation and the heritage, old school style, under Nick Saban, and you got Shannon coming from Miami.
So you think you're hanging your head on Nick Saban?
Paul.
Man, I tell you what, Ron. This conversation is a long way from being over, but I'm still not sure.
Let me say this before you get me off. We were 7-5 this year. We should have been 8-5 instead of Idaho. With all of that addition, we've had top recruiting class. Y'all are doing stuff now. This is something we always do. Do you honestly believe that we're going to go the same way we did last year?
Ron, other than the fact that, hey, slow down a second. Ron, you're like a lot of Florida. Ron, you just won't listen. Because it's Florida, you're just one of these people. Wow, we're Florida. What's Florida done lately?
No, I'm giving you the facts, though.
Florida's not in the upper echelon anymore in the SEC. They're hoping to get back there. But you've been passed, and you're having a difficult time accepting that. Tennessee's moved ahead of Florida. I know they haven't beaten them in 9 years, but Tennessee's ahead of Florida right now. You know that. Georgia lost to Florida. Georgia's ahead of Florida. That's the problem. Florida's beaten a couple of schools, but they're not gaining any traction. Maybe they will next week.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Carlos is up next in Georgia. Good afternoon, Carlos.
Hey, Paul. How are you today?
I'm well, thanks.
Good. I was calling in because I'm sitting here watching your show, and this is my first time calling. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak on your show. I'm a huge Florida Gator fan. Been following the Gators since 1989. And some of what Ron said earlier was okay, but it was a lot of hit and miss. The reason why Muschamp did not do so well was because he micromanaged. Instead of letting your offensive coordinators and your defensive coordinators do their job, you're trying to turn Florida into Alabama. You can't do that. We didn't have the right players to suit the kind of system that was needed to be run by him. I don't take anything away from Muschamp. I enjoyed why he was there, but facts are facts. Our offense sucked.
Yeah, but let me say this, Carlos, and I may have been a little bit hard on him, but Gator fans need to be careful in this regard. You can't just spend your life trashing the guy that was previously there. 2 years of trashing Urban, and now
Trust me, I'm not
okay.
trashing Muschamp. I enjoyed why he was there the whole entire time because he cleaned up our program. And I'm very grateful for that because we had a lot of players that felt like they were entitled to stuff, and he made a better situation from when he first got there.
Right.
True enough, the man's awesome. I had no problem with that. But when it's time to win games, we just failed.
He couldn't do it, no. You're right.
We couldn't do it. And, I mean, I'm a true Gator fan, and I'm going to just be honest and call it like it is. We lost games that we should have won. We were in contention with games that we should have won also. I mean, when we came up to Alabama this past year, we were in the game until halftime.
True.
We came back out, and it was like a totally different Florida Gator team showed up. It is what it is.
It was the same team.
Yeah, you're probably right. It was the same team. But like the loss with Georgia Southern last year, there was no reason why we lost that game. Yeah, we had tons of injuries, but it's all in coaching your players. When one man goes down, you should be able to plug in the hole just like Alabama does, like Nick Saban does. He loses tons of talent every year. You and Les Miles at LSU loses tons of talent, but y'all yet be able to replenish what you lost. We, on the other hand, we lose recruits, and it's like we don't develop the next player behind them.
Right. Well, let me say this. I mean, I think the most important thing is Muschamp has left. The question now is, can McElwain get it going? And I think he's probably been unfairly labeled because of the recruiting, but
coming in last minute trying to get.
Well, hold on, it wasn't last minute. I mean, McElwain was introduced. He was introduced on the first weekend in December. This isn't Harbaugh who came in at the end of the month. So I think it's a matter of what he does. And I heard more negativity from Gator fans after the hire than I did from anyone else. I mean, there was not a universal acceptance. I thought McElwain was a good choice. I thought he handled the opening press conference extremely well. But if he doesn't turn some recruits,
I watched the conference. Yeah. Actually, I watched the teleconference while at work. I was sneaking, trying to watch it and whatnot. And I think it's a good hire also because from what I gathered by reading on different sites and different things about McElwain, he's a good guy. He's really down to earth, and he gets the maximum out of his players. For his past quarterback that's out of Colorado State to really speak highly of him, for the quarterback that's on ESPN with you guys now from Alabama to speak highly of him, I mean, really, this guy, we must give him a chance. We gave Muschamp a chance. We gave Ron Zook a chance. Why can't we give this guy a chance?
It's a great point. Thank you very much. Jeff is in New York on a Wednesday afternoon. What's up, Jeff?
Hey, Paul. How you doing? I just wanted to call. I'm a first-time caller. I just wanted to call, and I just want to channel in a little bit on what's going on down with the Gator fans. I know you're a little upset with us right now, but you got to understand that we're kind of in the basement of the conference, and we're kind of used to running this thing, you know. And Jeremy Foley, you know, he kind of is to blame for all this. I know a lot of fans, we want to talk about the coaches because, you know, the SEC is heavily on football, a lot of revenue, so a lot of coaches is the face. But if you ask me, it goes to the athletic director. But when you talk about one of those moves, then you go in part to what they do with the swimming programs and different other programs that do successfully still win, even though the basketball program is down. We beat Alabama last night. But that's needless to point. Only I really want to say is that you got to understand that we are kind of in our bag right now because we're used to winning. And when I was growing up a young boy watching Danny Werfel and Ike Hilliard, all the talent, you know, or Fred Taylor, all the talent come in, and we was very successful. I remember watching Freddie Millens in Alabama and feeling sorry for those guys, and that's why I was watching them. You see what I'm saying? And then for it to turn all the way around. For it to turn all the way around, and we're kind of in the basement. I don't mean to cut you off, Paul, because I know we only get 2 minutes of fame in this world. But for it to turn around and we're kind of in the basement, it hurts us. You know, when Spurrier did leave to go take the Washington job, Ron Zook did stay, and he was part of the family, so that was fine for us. Okay, and then what do? We went out and we hired the coach in waiting at Texas, waiting on Mac Brown to lose his job. But what happened was he came on, and now, okay, so when he become the coach, Urban Meyer goes to ESPN for a year, sickness or whatever. Then he come back to Ohio State. That's besides the point. Jeremy Foley should have hired somebody from Urban Meyer and coaching staff, one of the assistants, because those guys are big. Mississippi State is big. Dan Mullen is big. You know, Charlie Strong is big. He went from Louisville, Teddy Bridgewater, to Texas, and now what y'all guys said earlier, that he might get a big kid out of Texas now and even take ground on Tevin Sumlin territory. That's huge, Paul. We didn't get one of those coaches. Jim McElroy, he come from Alabama legacy. I understand what Alabama have done. Nick Saban, he didn't want to compete against Bill Belichick, so he left Miami, left New England. You know, his challenge in life, he got to live with that. We got one of his kids, you know, and I hope McElwain do well, but I don't think he's the big splashy name that we would want. A lot of coaches is good in the SEC, great. Butch Jones was great at Cincinnati. Oh, man, it's just so many good coaches out there. You know, Arkansas coach was great at Wisconsin, man. It's the type of way you got to coach. It's the heart that you got to bring. And I don't know if McElwain got it. Like you said, we're judging too early. But as a Gator fan, we hate to watch where we have become as a conference. It's an SEC network. We're number one in the world now, and we're in the basement with Vanderbilt. And I like Derek Mason. I like minority hires. But we're in the basement with Vanderbilt. And it hurts, and it hurts. And that's the only reason why that other caller was in his bag, Paul. You do a great job. This need to be on ESPN. I mean, SportsCenter actually on ESPN. You know, soon it will be, because I'm sure you guys' revenue is up, and I enjoy watching you every day. And I just want to hear back on your comments now from me. Thank you, sir.
Jeff, thank you. Listen, I'm enjoying the conversation about Florida. There are a lot of varying views. That happens when you go through transition, and it's a tough transition. Gator fans are hopeful, though.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Jerry is calling next in Philadelphia.
Hey, Paul,
Jerry.
you know, this is what I love about your show. You've got some really funny, interesting people. You got some absolute clowns, too, but it's what makes it well worth it. It warms the heart on a very cold night up here in Philadelphia. Let's put it that way.
Glad to hear it.
Paul, I don't have any dog in this fight, but I am constantly fascinated by some of your callers who want various coaches' heads on platters because they don't win championships day in and day out. They get a good coach's head on the platter, and then they go through what Tennessee is going through and finally maybe pulling out of, what Florida is descending into. I would like to just sound a cautionary note to all of them out there that be careful what you wish for. You know, everybody is after Mark Richt at Georgia, for example, and the guy has done great work there. Yeah, he hasn't put a championship there, but I'll tell you what, he represents that program very, very well, and they play very good football year in and year out. And, you know, one of these days, they'll have to replace him, and they're going to look back and say, geez, why did we run him off? And this is one of the things that I see as I grow older, and it fascinates me because, boy, Tennessee has gone through the depths, and Alabama went through a hellacious period till Nick came in and rescued them.
No, one thing that you said is you said a lot of things that are interesting, but you know, the more you change, you better get it right, or otherwise you will be in the desert. And you mentioned Alabama; they swung and they missed on a couple of coaches, and went almost 20 years between championships. I know they won one or two in the middle of that, but it didn't seem like it. And Florida now is on the clock. I mean, Jeremy Foley is late in his career there, so I mean, people that say he's going to lose his job, they don't know, they don't understand how effective he has been. But this is a critical hire on Jim McElwain, and there is not a universal feeling that he is going to make it very big. I happen to think he will, but there are Gator fans who don't know, and when they read headlines like they did the other day that recruiting isn't going very well, it could still change in the final week. There is a lot of angst and anxiety and that's what you're getting. Because if he doesn't make it, this program is pretty much hit the skids for a long time, because you cannot have a disastrous year like Urban had his final year, have Muschamp, and then have another mistake.
Well, Muschamp, I mean, they wanted him. He was the heir apparent. He was the savior, so to speak. They couldn't get Urban out of town fast enough.
But by the way, Jerry, one thing about Muschamp, though, everyone wanted Muschamp. Tennessee wanted Muschamp at one point. Auburn wanted Muschamp. Texas got Muschamp. LSU talked to him at one point. I mean, this was a very much. We didn't realize Muschamp was a lousy head coach at the time. That's always the mystery.
Paul, as I grow older, as I said, I'm fascinated by this. I'm a Villanova grad, right? And we got a guy that's coached our 1AA football team, Andy Talley, who's just done a wonderful job there for many, many years. Jay Wright is doing God's work at the university with the basketball team. And you know what? I'm thankful that we have an administration that stays with these men. They hired good people. We haven't we got a football championship at 1AA and a very competitive program, but I'm thankful that we have men who seem to have their heads on straight and get kids, for the most part, whose heads are on straight, too. I would never want my degree devalued because of something that an athlete did or something that a coach did on the altar of just winning for winning's sake.
Yeah, but Jerry, let me go back to another point, though, and I don't know what business you're in, but
I'm a salesman, Paul. I sell steel.
Well, you've seen good days and bad.
Absolutely.
But my point, though, is it's in the personnel. It's very difficult. I always talk to small business owners, and they say the toughest part about running a business is hiring good people, because there's no magic formula, and that goes for coaching as well. I can't tell you how many coaches I've hired. I've coaches hiring I've covered in my career, and you sit there and you go, you know this is going to either be a big success or a failure, and you're wrong. And Jeremy Foley, I've said it repeatedly, is one of the best, if not the best, athletic director in the country. He missed on Ron Zook. He missed on Will Muschamp. He did get it right with Urban Meyer and won 2 national championships. So, is he good or is he bad? I mean, this hire will determine. He got it right
on Billy Donovan, too.
Yeah, he did pretty well on Billy Donovan.
And managed to keep him.
Yeah.
When he was looking to leave.
Well, he left. Billy Donovan took the Orlando Magic job and then came back. And by the way, he's hired women's coaches and men's coaches who have won championships in every sport. Ultimately, that's part of his resume. But this McElwain hire is going to be very big in terms of how he's remembered.
One last point, Paul. You're very close to these types of processes. Most of us are not. How active are the alumni in this, and could that be part of the problem?
Well, I think in some places the alumni play a much bigger role. At Florida, I don't think they do, because I think Jeremy has the support of Bernie Matchin. And by the way, I give Jeremy a lot of credit for Urban Meyer, but it is a fact that Bernie Matchin was with Urban Meyer at Utah, and that had something to do with the decision to hire him.
Hey, listen, thanks. I enjoy the program very much. I listen whenever I can. And it's really very interesting. Thanks.
Jerry, great to hear from you. We've had a call from Queens and Philadelphia.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
We welcome you back, Greg McElroy. He's with us, the former quarterback. I mean, you've been so many places. I don't want to pigeonhole.
Yeah.
Bama, the Jets.
Sure. The Bengals. I'm sure.
The Bengals.
I'm sure I identify a lot with the Jets and the Bengals organization.
You seem to have had a pretty good year the year after the NFL.
I've enjoyed it.
No.
I enjoy this side of it. I really do. Because, Paul, we've talked about it a million times. What possibly beats college athletics? Nothing. Very little. So
no, it's good.
It's a good thing to be involved in.
If I ever had to do over again, I'd try to make a living being in this business. Well, it's good to see you, and I caught you maybe it was this morning. I mean, when you're on SEC Now, it's like it doesn't matter when you watch it, it's on.
Always.
And you were talking about the coordinators, and for whatever reason, actually there is a reason, because of the recruiting rankings as of today. They'll change next week, but your old coach, Coach Mack at Florida, taking a few hits, and I know you think a lot of him, and we all do. You also talked a lot about his hire of Doug Nussmeier. So, first of all, what's going on down there in Florida right now?
Well, I think it's just hard to put together a class when you have very little time.
Right.
And obviously, everyone's going to be picketing, and everyone's going to be going into Florida and trying to get all the best players. That is the state that supplies most of the SEC with its talent, especially at the skill positions. So, Florida is obviously behind the eight ball. I mean, that's the fact of the matter. You have a coaching change. It's understandable that you're not going to be on the top shelf. You're not going to be in the top of the recruiting rankings. But if they can salvage a few impact players, Will Muschamp recruited well. That is not an empty cupboard. It's by no means bare. So there's plenty there to be able to coach up. But it would be nice to not have to deal with this class being a little bit smaller in the years to come if they're able to salvage with some quality talent.
So, regardless of what happens next Wednesday, and it won't be a great day by Florida standards, it could be average, it could be disastrous. You believe that he'll quickly turn the page.
It'll be fine, and it'll be fine because I was talking to a couple people. He's been all over the place. He's been up in Montana recruiting. He's been in Florida, clearly trying to put up a picket fence around
what have they been
state.
recruiting in Montana?
I've heard he was in Montana. I guess there's a very under the radar prospect there that might be on the radar for some people in the very near future. So it's just takes time. And he has some guys there, clearly Randy Shannon and Jeff Collins, guys that have recruited that area before. They're going to be just fine. This first year, it's understandable not to put together a class when you're going up against the likes of Butch Jones, who's done a tremendous job. Georgia, of course, has been off the charts. And then of Alabama, Auburn, you name it. Texas A&M's up there again. It never ends with those schools. So Ole Miss, once again, Mississippi State has a real nice class going so far. So it's only a matter of time before Jim McElwain and that staff become a little bit more accustomed to being back in the Southeastern Conference.
They better hurry.
They better hurry. There is no rest for the weary.
I know you've talked a lot about Brian Schottenheimer, someone you know fairly well, and there's been mostly good vibes, but you know some wonder can he fill in adequately or even better than adequately for Mike Bobo. You have a very positive read on him.
I do. I really like Brian Schottenheimer because you look at NFL offensive coordinator transitioning into the college ranks. Okay, all you get to do is look and see what Lane Kiffin was able to do just a year ago. He took a receiver who had underperformed, relatively speaking, the year before and made him into an All-American, a Heisman Trophy contender, a top 3, top 4 draft pick. That's what's going to possibly happen at Georgia. Now, they don't have the talent at wide receiver right now, but they do have the offensive line and the running game. So that's what he'll feature. Brian Schottenheimer, he does have a little bit of an extreme system. It's a tough system to understand. Since he's gone to St. Louis, he has simplified everything. He's made it a little bit more streamlined. And as a result, guys have been able to adjust. Rookies have had a little bit more of an impact than they have had in years past. So I would expect him to do a really nice job. He's outstanding with quarterbacks. He's a nice temperament. He gets on guys, but not really to the point where they lose confidence. So he has been looking into going into the college ranks for some time. And I remember when Jim McElwain actually took the job at Colorado State, Brian Schottenheimer's name was mentioned in Tuscaloosa, and I have it on good authority that was a very difficult decision for him to turn down because he did, in fact, have that opportunity if he, in fact, wanted it. So there have been moments when he has looked into getting into college. I know he's passionate about college. He's clearly a guy who's familiar with the Southeastern Conference and a guy that has coaching in his bloodline. So he's going to do just fine.
Speaking about changes, we have just seen a lot of coaching changes, particularly at the OC position. But at Alabama, a couple of guys take off, you know them, and new people come in. Is that standard procedure for Nick Saban?
It seems like it, yeah. I mean, there's always going to be turnover because guys are going to have opportunities, and especially with Nick Saban's coaching tree starting to become a little bit more vast. I mean, you see Will Muschamp obviously was a head coach at one point, now going back, and he knows Lance Thompson, and you know, obviously you see what's going on at LSU. Chavis leaves, in comes
Coach Steele. I mean, it's just when you have that pedigree of having worked for Nick Saban, and obviously the success he's had in recent years, dating back in the last decade, people are going to want a piece of that knowledge. People are going to want to know exactly how he does things, which makes his assistants very valuable. You'd see the offensive line coach at Georgia is now another descendant of Nick Saban coaching tree, Rob Sale, coming from McNeese State. Kirby Smart is going to have an opportunity to go somewhere if, in fact, he does so choose. So he just is an outstanding coach, and he breeds quality coaches. I mean, one of his coaches just won a national championship a couple years ago.
Yes. It's a cliche to talk about Nick Saban and recruiting. It doesn't seem like it will ever end. But having been a big part of that program, knowing the intricacies, what makes Nick Saban different? What makes his staff different when it comes to recruiting?
Well, I think they are able to sell the fact that you're going to have a very real opportunity to win a national championship in your 3, 4, or 5-year career, however long it may be. You have a real opportunity, if you do in fact decide to leave early, to go in the first round of the NFL draft. 18 guys have decided to go early and forego their senior season or their redshirt junior season, whatever it may be. 12 of those 18 have gone in the first 32 picks, first-round picks, and very likely to have 2 out of 3 this year, with T.J. Yeldon obviously probably being the only one of the 3 guys that declared early that probably is on the outside looking in the first round. Landon Collins is a shoe-in, and clearly Amari Cooper is going to be a top 5 pick. So when you can offer that opportunity to go to the NFL and have success on the college level, plus obviously coaches in the NFL are going to be asking and picking Nick Saban's brain on some of the talent, it's a very valuable resource to have in your corner when, in fact, you do decide to go to the professional ranks.
So if you are a 5-star whatever, you're thinking about the NFL and you're thinking about national championships. I guess there are other factors, but those override.
Well, you also think about it. You look at a situation like Tennessee putting together back-to-back outstanding classes. The reason why is because they do have the opportunity to play early, and a lot of guys – there's not a lot of Landon Collins out there. Right. And not a guy who's willing to, hey, I'm a 5-star athlete, I'm one of the top players in the country, but I'm going to go play special teams, and I'm going to learn the defense. And when I do get my chance, I'm going to succeed. There's not a ton of guys like that, and that's not a bad thing. Guys want to play early. They're competitive. That's a good quality, and that's what Tennessee's been able to offer. They say, hey, if you come in, you're going to have an impact immediately. We're going to play a ton of freshmen. LSU has been able to offer that in the past, which is a big reason why they've gotten a ton of recruits over the years, because they play a lot of freshmen, and there's obviously a huge recruiting backyard in the state of Louisiana. So there's a lot of different reasons why people go elsewhere. Some people like tradition. I, for one, loved the SEC because of the passion. I loved the tradition that the University of Alabama provided. So I think that was some of the things that factor in. Everybody goes for different reasons. I didn't go with the foresight of thinking I'm going to go to the NFL. I wanted to get a good education. I want to go to business school and go become a lawyer. And I wanted to have a radio talk show host just like you, Paul.
I wish I could have talked some sense into you. Let me ask you, because next week, fans watching, listening will obsess over the 5 stars. You were clearly not a 5-star. Your story is fairly well known, but for those who don't know it, you originally committed to Texas Tech, then you changed your commitment late and went to Alabama. And I remember I was a talk show host in Birmingham when I saw that you had committed. I go, how did they end up with this guy? Because it looked bad for the coach. Everyone knows Mike Shula had the inside track on Tim Tebow. He didn't go. He went to Florida, even though I still think he regrets not going to Alabama. Just kidding. But I remember someone telling me, hey, hold on a second. This guy went to a great high school. He's a winner. And I said, no way. Of course,
no chance.
No, not a chance.
He will never pan out.
But, I mean, you ended up not only leading Alabama to a national championship, but playing in the NFL. So what were you thinking at that moment? Because certainly there weren't TV trucks outside your house when you announced.
No, there certainly weren't. I mean, obviously coming from a storied program like Southlake Carroll, where Kenny Hill, for those of you around the SEC that are not familiar with Southlake, it's a very prestigious program in the just outside Dallas-Fort Worth area. A lot of really good players have come through, especially in recent years. So a big reason why I was recruited late is I didn't start until my senior year in high school, and I was kind of a late bloomer. I was, and that was not necessarily a bad thing. I just had to keep working to get better because I wasn't that good at that point.
I had to get better, and when I got into my senior year, I finally started. And Alabama kind of observed me along the way. Tim Tebow, of course, that was their number one prospect. And when he decided to go to Florida, it opened the door for me. I decided on Alabama after taking my visits and knew that was the right place for me. But there are 5-star guys that come in all the time that never pan out, all the time, because people get so enthralled with the big arm and the measurables and how fast this guy can run, but they don't ever necessarily measure the intelligence. They don't necessarily measure the intangibles. They don't always figure in, the heart or the chip on a guy's shoulder or how hard he's going to work and what his upside is. It's so easy. And the NFL isn't an exact science either. I mean, you go into the NFL draft, the first-round pick, half of them fail, and they're out of the league in a very short period of time. So it's definitely an inexact science. Just the biggest thing is coaching. Look, getting the guys through the door is outstanding. Having a top recruiting class, I'm not going to sit here and say it doesn't matter because it does. But developing the guys when they get there. There are programs that have had top 5 recruiting classes for several years. I can think back, University of Texas, a ton of unbelievable classes. They have their pick of the litter every year in Texas, but recruiting has gotten so much younger. Guys are committing as sophomores, freshmen even. Even a 13-year-old a few years ago committed to the University of Southern California. It happens. So when you do, in fact, get that guy that's a finished product, that's the ultimate issue. Will they get better? Do they still have room to grow? How much more improving can they do? And that's one of the things that I think a lot of coaches look into, and that's why some of the 3-star guys eventually become some of the better players across the country.
Well, I saw that stat today. I think this is correct, that there aren't any 5-stars in the Super Bowl.
0.
I mean, what else do you need to know?
Well, it speaks a lot. And you think about it, all right? Russell Wilson, 2-star, 3rd-round pick. Richard Sherman, 2-star. Cornerback, Stanford. I mean, really kind of under the radar 4th-round pick. I mean, guys fly under the radar all the time, but you can't measure the intangibles and the ball skills and all those things that don't necessarily have a number that you can put by the name. It's tough to measure, but that's a big part of this game. That's why it's a great game, Paul. You don't have to be 6'5" to play wide receiver. You can be Steve Smith, 5'9", have the biggest chip on your shoulder in the NFL, and be one of the best players in the history of the Carolina Panthers. So it's definitely a great game for that, and that's why recruiting is so fun. You get to see those diamonds in the rough that you wouldn't necessarily pay attention to on signing day. But you see them develop over the next 5 years, and they might become the leaders of your team.
Greg McElroy, you'll see a lot more of him over the next few days as we march to next Wednesday. Great to see you.
Always fun, Paul.
Thank you for listening to the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast. Tune into the Paul Finebaum Show every day from 3 to 7 Eastern on the SEC Network or on the ESPN radio app.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.